A couple of weeks ago, I did a review of Fungi of the Far Realms, which is not only a pretty cool book, because it's an encyclopedia of weird fungi that you might find exploring the multiverse, but also it is an in-game artifact. By that I mean it is a book that does not contain any stats or game mechanics or anything like that, and so the players can actually take the book and treat it as if it is a real object in the world that they're exploring. One of the comments from that video asked if I knew of any other books along similar lines, and yes, I do. Today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different books that work as in-game artifacts, as well as being really cool RPG books. So stay tuned and we're going to go through them. You're watching Questing Beast, a channel about old school role-playing games and the modern renaissance that's bringing them back to life. If you'd like to stay up to date with this series of videos that I'm making on some of the weird books that are coming out of this old school scene, remember to subscribe down below and hit that bell icon to stay updated when new videos appear. The first book that we're going to look at in this series is one of my favorite monster manuals of all time, and that is Fire on the Velvet Horizon. So this is one of the first books that I reviewed, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. It contains 100 monsters approximately, and as I mentioned before, there are no stats, there's no game mechanics. It's just descriptions of the monsters along with these kind of crazed collage-like drawings done by Scrap Princess. And they're very much either you really love them or you really don't. But regardless of the art, the writing is fantastic. It's all done by Patrick Stewart, and it really makes the monsters come alive in your brain and spark idea after idea. It actually took me months, I think, to read this entire book, mostly because that you would read, one or two of these monsters and you'd have to set the book down because your brain was just on fire with ideas for ways that you could use these monsters in your campaign. It was kind of overwhelming. I happen to really like the art. I think that it fits well with the kind of crazed ramblings of a maniacal wizard, which is how the book kind of comes across. It also quotes a number of other wizards that have investigated these monsters and have their own opinions about them. So it's an excellent in-world artifact. The only thing that would take it away from that is that it's all kind of done in this typewritten font. So it looks like it's done on a typewriter, which doesn't necessarily fit in a fantasy world. But in terms of a really cool monster manual that the players might stumble across, it's really hard to do better than Fire on the Velvet Horizon. Next up, we have a field guide to Hot Springs Island. I have ranted about this more than once in the past, but there's no way I can't bring it up here. This is a journal, or it's a compendium of a number of explorers' experiences exploring the weird island of Hot Springs Island. So Hot Springs Island comes with a big, back here, it's a full hardcover book for the DM, explaining what's on this hex crawl, this dark, misty, very dangerous fantasy island. But when your players start out the campaign, you can literally just hand them this book and say that maybe on the beach, on a skeleton that's washed up on shore, you find the field guide to Hot Springs Island. And there's always going to be one player, at least, who's going to be extremely excited about that. Because as they explore this island, you can simply describe monsters or plants just by what they look like, and they'll be frantically thumbing through this book trying to find what it's referring to and what knowledge has already been written down here. It makes players feel smarter because they find the references in the book and they start piecing things together. It gives them more information so that they can more immediately engage with the setting, and it's just a really cool looking book. So if you're going to run a Hot Springs Island campaign, you basically have to get this book. It's just one of the coolest handouts I've ever seen. Our next book is Apocrypha, a book of speculative ages by Skirples. So this book is a lot thinner than the previous ones, and it's a lot more comedic in its tone. It describes 100 weird possible previous epics of the world. This is taken from a lot of the studies of deep time that you might do even in our world, where you find out that there were periods in the past going beyond the dinosaurs, where the world was very strange and unexpected. And this takes this to an extreme, where you have things like the Great Realignment, the Crazy Cat Age, the Kleptocene Epoch, the Carnocene Epoch, the Groovy Age, the Gentrozoic Era, the Second Bird Age, and so on. A lot of them are really funny. They're very well written, and it comes across well as a kind of scholarly work that you might find in a library or in a university, often by some scholar that everyone tries to avoid because they were just kind of nuts. And it's a lot of fun to read. Especially works well if your players are doing any sort of time travel, or even if they're exploring deep into a dungeon, they might find layers of the earth that give hints at some of the weird ages that have come before. The only thing that makes it not work as well as a handout is there is, I think, one page where it talks about ways that you could use this in your campaign, where it mentions things like PCs and so on. But apart from that, it would work entirely as an in-world artifact that players would get a real kick out of reading. I know it was one of the most fun books that I've read for this channel, and I got a lot of laughs out of it while I was reading, which is pretty rare for just reading an RPG book. We're going to go slightly off the beaten path for the next one and look at the Loathsome Ratmen and all their vile kin. So this isn't strictly a D&D book. It's written for, as you might expect, the Warhammer fantasy universe. Although, I mean, why can't you put Skaven into a D&D game? No one's going to stop you. Skaven are the best faction, in my opinion. And this book is written from the perspective of a scholar in the Empire trying to convince everyone that the Skaven, or the Ratmen, are in fact real. It features a lot of the best Skaven artwork that you're going to come across in the Warhammer universe. You can find some really good ones here. A lot of stuff that's done well in black and white. There's some color stuff as well. There's a lot of sketches of weird anatomy that you might find. It's really immersive because it's all written in character, including lots of crazy footnotes that references other books that may or may not actually exist. So if your players are playing Warhammer, or if you're just putting Ratmen into your D&D game, this is a must-have. It is a lot of fun, even if you just like the art. And finally, we're going to look at some science fiction with strange stars. So this works really well for any kind of open sandbox sci-fi campaign. It would work really well for Stars Without Number, but it is totally systemless, and it's not that long, but it is beautifully illustrated. The whole thing is done in color. It has pictures and write-ups of different alien species, of different star lanes, of different planets and civilizations, and so on. Just describing this one particular kind of pulpy sci-fi universe. The way that it's laid out, it reminds me a little bit of like an eyewitness book or just a kid's visual encyclopedia, but it's of a completely fictional made-up universe. So I suppose you would either use it as a kid's book, maybe that they find in universe, or you could use the spreads as a kind of something that they would find on a holo display while they're researching the next star system. You can pull out the page for that and just show them the brief summary that they find on that equivalent of the internet. So those are the main examples of in-world RPG books that you can hand out to your players that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are many more of these, and I would love to collect more of them if I can find some really good examples. So if you are aware of other books of this type, please tell me about it in the comments below, because I would love to check those out. Giving high quality handouts to my players that immerse them deeper into the world is one of the most fun parts of playing an RPG. Players are always extremely surprised by it. Like, there's a whole book that I can read that details this world that I can use as a character in the game. That's just, it kind of blows their mind a lot of the time. And it's just a really exciting moment in any RPG. That's it for my video today. You can check out my reviews of most of these books elsewhere on my channel. I'll put links to them. And I'll also put links in the description below to where you can pick up copies of these books for yourself if you're so inclined. The only book here that I've not done a review of is The Loathsome Ratmen and All Their Vile Kin, just because it didn't quite fit in with a lot of the OSR nature of my channel. But who knows? I might do a review of that someday. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.